Hey guys, what's up? So this past week I was on Instagram and I was asking y'all kind of like what you'd like to see in these videos. And someone mentioned AIP, otherwise known as the Autoimmune Protocol. And that got me to thinking, and I was like, you know what, I really need to talk about that because that was a big part of my healing journey. So that is what we're going to talk about today. AIP stands for the Autoimmune Protocol, or as some people say, like autoimmune paleo. So essentially you have paleo and then you have AIP, which is like a subset of paleo, and essentially it takes out all the potentially inflammatory foods. And while paleo itself is relatively like anti-inflammatory, low inflammatory, there are certain foods that can be problematic for those with autoimmune diseases. Some of the main ones include nightshades, so tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, and peppers, eggs, especially the egg white, nuts and seeds, and there are, alcohol. There's a bunch of other ones out there that foods that are somewhat allowed on paleo, not necessarily alcohol, but anyways, that you then remove from your paleo diet. So that's pretty much AIP in a nutshell. I do have a post on the blog all about the AIP and some of the different things like why you eliminate eggs and stuff like that, and I will link to those below. But let's get going on my journey with AIP. So my journey with AIP actually kind of started before I knew that I was doing AIP. I don't really exactly remember when AIP became like the thing to do for autoimmune diseases, but back in, I would say, like 2012 time, I was seeing this, I believe it was a homeopathic kinesiologist or something, one of the kind of like side doctors that I saw along with all my other functional medicine doctors. And we did a lot of muscle testing and for supplements and foods and stuff like that. And I remember one day that we were doing some muscle testing for my liver, and he was like, you need to stay away from tomatoes. And I was like, tomatoes, okay. The only time I really ate tomatoes was in my omelet that I would make in the morning. But I was like, okay, I will eliminate tomatoes. I already didn't eat potatoes, mainly because I couldn't handle the starch. I knew my GI tract couldn't handle it. And I already didn't eat eggplant because eggplant is like not that great. And then I was eating peppers on and off, but I had actually eliminated those like the year prior because it felt like every time I ate them, my GI tract would just like burn, even though they weren't spicy peppers. It would just like burn. And then I'd get like burning down the side of my legs. So I was like, okay, that's weird. So I took those out. So pretty much eggs, nuts and seeds, and tomatoes were like the main things left. And when I say nuts and seeds, seed-based spices are also eliminated in the elimination phase. So like black pepper, I believe cumin seed, things like that. So that's kind of where my journey began with AIP. Not full AIP, obviously, because when you do full AIP, the elimination phase, you eliminate everything, just so that you can really track your symptoms and get the most out of the protocol. So that's kind of where my journey started. And it wasn't until probably a few months later that I was really introduced to AIP in full. So one of the things that I started doing when I first got sick was I started following two bloggers that were actually introduced to me through a nutritionist that I saw at the time, who I stopped seeing because, well, yeah, anyways. So I stopped seeing them, but the two good things that I got out of seeing them was that I learned of the Spunky Coconut, who I still follow today, and you should too, because her blog and her recipes are awesome. And I don't remember the other one. It was something about like nourish something. But anyways, so I started following them. And then from there, of course, from the Spunky Coconut mainly, I started following different people like Mark Sisson and the Paleo Mom and, more and more people, Chris Kresser. So I started, the Paleo Mom is really how I was introduced to it, obviously, because she's known as like the leading doctor for AIP and all that kind of stuff. So I don't remember the exact day, I really don't, that I was introduced to AIP and I was like, oh, I need to do that. But it made sense because Lyme is neurological in nature and it's also autoimmune in nature. And I definitely had some autoimmune issues. Thankfully, the IVIG treatments that I was getting and had gotten helped a lot with my body not like creating more autoimmune diseases, because usually when you have one, it's really easy for your body to then, like, I say create, but I mean it's really just like your body starts, you know, reacting to more and more things, mimicking this and that, and then you have like 3 autoimmune diseases. So that had a big play in it. But I also would say that when I found AIP at the very beginning of my healing journey, that had a big impact on my overall healing. So to answer the question, I'm sorry if I'm yelling, no one's home, so I'm talking freely. So to answer the question, did I start AIP first? Yes. Semi first. I had started paleo, I had started gluten-free and grain-free and all that, and was kind of experimenting. And then I finally did AIP. Now, I don't have an exact day of when I started AIP, but I do know there was an exact day, because whenever I do something, I do it like go big or go home. So I was not the person that was like, oh, I'm gonna start AIP, but like I might have a cheat meal, or like, oh, this is really hard, like I can't eat eggs anymore, what am I gonna do? No, that wasn't me. I was just pretty much like, AIP, okay, I can handle it, I can do this, cut out everything, and am not tempted by anything. Like, that's just how I am about stuff, and that's how I was. So, and I also don't have a duration, like, of how long I did AIP. All I know is I did it for at least a year, at least. I'm pretty sure it was at least, it might have been 2 or 3 years. And so this might, like the time that I was on AIP, you know, AIP technically shouldn't be a diet for life. There's a lot of people out there that talk about how it's too restrictive and it can cause eating disorders and just an unhealthy relationship with food, because even if you are scared of a food for a legitimate reason, like that still can cause issues between you and food and you and your dinner plate. So I get that. But that really wasn't why I stuck to mainly AIP. The main reason was of allergies and my mast cell issues and my histamine issues. And it was just kind of safer to stay in AIP than venture out and like try anything crazy. That being said, I believe it was right around the time that I moved here to Tennessee that I started or had already started reintroducing eggs. And I started with egg yolks. And I did egg yolks for at least, I would say 3 to 6 months. I know that's kind of a big time gap, but I don't remember exactly when. And I would try egg yolks for a while, maybe like once a week. And then I would, I don't know, add an egg white in here and there and see how my body reacted. The main thing for me with eggs was bloating, and it still is. To this day, sometimes I end up eating too many eggs just because they're easy and they help me get my macro and micronutrients in throughout the day. And so sometimes when I'm eating too many eggs, I get a little bloated, or not a little bloated, I get bloated, or more bloated than I already am. And for some reason, I know this is a little bit off topic, but sometimes people with gallbladder issues have sensitivities to eggs. I don't know how legit that is, but I've read it and I found it to be true myself. So if my gallbladder is acting up, sometimes eggs are not a good idea, even though they seem like they would be because they're pretty easy to digest. But anyways, so I started with eggs, and that was right around the time I started with ghee as well. Tin Star Foods ghee is my absolute favorite ghee. I think it's Fourth and Hearth is another good one. I don't know. I feel like every single ghee has a different type of flavor from the different type of cows it comes from and how it's processed. So I'm like, I turned into like a ghee connoisseur or something. But anyways, so I also started with ghee, and I did that for a very long time. And I think what made me not switch, but like all of a sudden be like, ooh, maybe I can try grass-fed butter, was when I was in school, because being in school, I was exposed to a lot more foods that I didn't eat. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. They're like, what? You can't eat that? I pretty much blew every professor's mind that like I couldn't eat half the crap I was eating. But it made me curious. I was like, I wonder if I can try this. So that's kind of when I got onto butter. So eggs and butter were like the two main thing. And so those were the first two things that I reintroduced into my elimination phase AIP diet. So the next two things that I reintroduced into my diet were actually because of my husband. He likes to push me in a lot of areas in life. And while he understood that, like why I ate the way I ate, he was always like, trying to get me to try other stuff and pretty much telling me like, if you react, like I'll take care of you, don't worry. Yeah, it's not a good idea. But anyways, it worked in my favor sometimes actually, because coffee was the next one. And I drank it on and off before I met him, very rarely though, like very rarely. And then he got me into iced coffee, but I was like, I can't really tolerate that well because it's still kind of acidic. And then I got him into cold brew, and then from there bulletproof coffee and all that great stuff. But he was really the one that pushed me, and mainly because TMI, as many of you know, Lyme settled in my gut. My gut still struggles to move, but even like 2 years ago it was way worse. So sometimes it'd be like, geez, I really need to go to the bathroom. He's like, you need to drink coffee, like drink some cold brew. I was like, fine, and it actually worked. So that's kind of when I reintroduced coffee. It was just kind of like, oh, coffee, here we go, let's see if this works. And it did work. Of course, I am still and was very caffeine sensitive. So I watch my intake. Even nowadays, like today I had decaf. I kind of prefer it. So yeah, I don't really like when my central nervous system gets like buzzed, because then I feel like everything's out of my control and I'm all over the place and I can't focus. So a little caffeine here and there is good, but pretty much decaf is the way to go, and coffee works fine for me. So the big one on the AIP, aside from alcohol, which let's run over that one real quick. My husband again was always like, yeah, on your birthday next year, like you're gonna be healthy enough to drink alcohol, you watch. And I'm like, okay, like I've never been the type that's been like, oh, I want alcohol. I got sick before I could legally drink alcohol. Had never really had a sip before then, I don't think. And so I was like, alcohol, cool. Like, I know what it does in my body, like what it does to your liver and what it does to your blood sugar and all that crap. And I was like, I really don't need it. Like, I already know in my head what it's doing to me, and it's not good. So we don't need to reintroduce that or introduce that at all. But of course we did, or I did. I don't want to say he forced me, but he always had me taking sips of his whiskey after he Googled for like 20 minutes if it was gluten-free or not. So that was kind of how the alcohol thing started. And I knew, like, when I would drink it, I wasn't necessarily getting an autoimmune reaction. I would always get a histamine reaction because of the fermentation and all that. So I was always like, no, I don't want that, because I'd get flushed in my face, I'd get hot and itchy, and then I just couldn't really enjoy my night. So that was kind of my experience with whiskey. What's the kind that I drank? I'm really drawing a blank right now. I'll come back to that later. But anyway, so I could drink it, and I had it a few times, and I wouldn't get like anaphylactic or anything. I wouldn't feel crappy. I would just get hot and itchy and all my histamine issues. So I drank it very, very sparingly. And then somehow, I don't know how, I got introduced to tequila. And it's interesting, high quality tequila, I do not react to at all. I don't get a histamine reaction to it. I don't feel crappy. My liver doesn't my sleep isn't bad. Like, I don't react to it at all. And tequila loves me, and I love tequila, so no, sorry. I really don't drink it. Mainly because I did drink it like sparingly, like maybe once a month, once I was able to reintroduce that. But then I started having the interstitial cystitis issues because of the Bartonella infection that ramped up in my body. So I just cut out all alcohol because I would take one sip and it'd be like, oh yeah, extreme bladder pain. Okay, I'm not doing that again. So that was my short-lived experience with alcohol and introducing alcohol into my diet. Which brings us on to the big one, which is nightshades. So for those of you who don't know, it's kind of funny. It's, again, my husband. But my husband is Mexican. So, again, nightshades. When you think of Mexican food, I mean, yeah, there's guacamole, there's great meats and stuff, but there are a lot of seed-based spices and nightshades, peppers, tomatoes, tomatillos, all of that stuff. So I remember one of our first official dates, we went to a taco place. And I was like, yeah, there's stuff I can eat. Like, I can get the whatever, like, on the side, like the steak with the salad or whatever. Well, come to find out, the thing that I ordered had a sauce on it. And I was like, oh, geez, I really don't want to know what's in the sauce because it's probably a nightshade. But we had been talking a lot about nightshades. And he's all like, no, I really think, like, the indigenous nightshade, like peppers or whatever, won't bother you. And I'm just like, babe, it's a nightshade. Like, it's going to bother me. But you know what? At that time, I had been doing AIP for like 3 years. I hadn't touched a nightshade in forever. I was like, you know what? If I have a little bit, I'm pretty sure I think my body can handle it. Like I was in a good mood, and that also really affects my reintroductions, is like where I am mentally. And when I was with him out on a date, I was happy and my whole body was relaxed, and it wasn't in a state of like, oh my gosh, this is a nightshade, and like reacting to it. So I had it. Come to find out, there's ancho chili in that paste, or in that sauce. So ancho chili paste in that sauce, and I actually was fine. And I was very weird. I was like, oh, I just had my first nightshade encounter and I was fine. I didn't have any joint pain. I didn't have any screaming pain down my legs. Didn't get a headache. I didn't get a histamine reaction. I didn't get anything. And he was like, see, I told you. It's because it's like from Mexico and yada, yada, yada. And I'm just like, yeah. But so that was my first encounter with nightshades. And since then, I really don't eat them. Like, I still stay away from them. I still stay away from tomatoes because tomatoes, again, they are a nightshade. And I don't feel good. I don't know. Peppers are one of those things that I do not feel comfortable eating on a regular basis. And I know I didn't react to ancho chili. And I know that I can have a little bit of like guajillo, ground guajillo pepper or chili, whatever, and ground ancho chili powder, like when we're cooking sparingly, not every day. And I know it doesn't bother me, but I really don't feel like experimenting with like whole chilies. Like, I'm not there yet. I'm sure one day my husband will make me, and I know some of you watching this are like, that is a terrible relationship, but it's been good, don't worry. So, yeah, so he always likes me to say, because of him, I know that I can drink coffee and eat some nightshades. Another little one in there that I forgot to mention is that I was able to reintroduce some seed-based spices. I find that cumin is the most friendly to me, so that's the kind of one that I go for, and black pepper. Those I do not react to. All the other ones, paprika, I'm pretty sure is a histamine, so I stay away from that one. I did eat it at one point in time, but every time I ate it, it made me super bloated, so I just kind of decided to not, and itchy. So those are pretty much the main things that I have reintroduced from back in the days of when I did the elimination phase AIP. Since I have reintroduced those things, there really isn't a time where I go back to full AIP. Honestly, I don't feel the need to. Now, that's not to say sometimes I will, first off, I don't eat nightshades on a daily basis. So having to fully eliminate those again isn't really difficult. So if I do feel like I'm flaring, I'll just be extra intentional about not having that ancho chili paste in my chicken or whatever. On top of that, the pepper and the cumin, I really feel are just super, super like they don't touch me at all. Like, they don't bother me. So I never really worry about the seed-based spices things. Eggs, again, like I said earlier, sometimes I will try and go like a few days without them and see if I have a decrease in symptoms, but otherwise they're pretty mild on my body. And they never really have been like a huge issue. So yeah, so some days I'll do that. And of course I don't drink alcohol because of my IC. So, and then coffee, the only thing coffee does to me, it's never messed with my thyroid markers. It's never messed with anything like the raised cortisol or whatever. It's just my own personal preference of not wanting to feel jittery. So that's why I opt for decaf, and decaf doesn't bother me at all. Again, sometimes like the caffeinated versions of my cold brew can like clear out my gut too much, and then I know like, okay, I need to stop with that. There's sometimes it'll mess with like my sleep and being able to relax. So that's why I don't really drink it very much. So I kind of do AIP, but I kind of don't. It's really just about being mindful, and coming from a place of doing AIP, strict AIP for years, I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And there are definitely some things that I may try and reintroduce in the future when my allergies go away. But that's really the main thing that stops me from reintroducing some more things that are otherwise approved on regular paleo, is because of my histamine. So histamine issues, if you want to learn more about them, I will also link to the article that I wrote below. It's like a super lengthy thing about histamine and all that kind of good stuff, or bad stuff, depending on if you have histamine issues or not. But yeah, so that's pretty much my journey with AIP. I know everyone's is different. And I definitely, even though I do keto now along with my AIP, or my modified AIP, I would call it, I definitely still recommend AIP as a whole, and the elimination diet phase and all that stuff. I think it's really, really good, especially if you are coming from a place with an autoimmune disease. Would I say go to AIP or go to keto? I would say first try AIP. I have known some people that keto actually worked better than the AIP with reducing their inflammation markers, which I find very interesting. But right off the bat, I would just say try AIP. If that doesn't work, explore your other options. But yeah, so that's about it. I hope this was helpful for some of you guys. I know I was kind of all over the place, but that's pretty much AIP for me in a nutshell. And I will link to the post below, and I'll see you next time.